Think of a classic day at Wake Forest. You sit down between classes to start on assignments, but instead find yourself searching for your next going out top or new jacket for the chilly weather. Your Canvas tab is turned into a Forever 21 tab, and you're scrolling through pages of clothing, adding random items to your cart, and maybe even purchasing a few pieces on a whim. These add to an already expansive wardrobe, but they satisfy your procrastination nonetheless. Now let's rethink the scenario. You need new clothes, but there are no longer online shops, stores, and racks on racks of styles to decide between. You instead have a nearby fabric shop and hopefully the means to sew yourself a new outfit for the coming summer weather. These two scenarios describe a before and after. They document a shift in the apparel industry. This shift roots itself in Britain during the late 17th century, as it is from this period that ready-made garments emerged. The enclosure movement and industrial revolution generated urban growth and new manufacturing processes able to support large-scale production and reproducibility. In response, the consumer class emerged and a demand for ready-made apparel began to grow. Consumer preferences shifted as people no longer had time to make their own clothing, and their wages did not support using bought fabrics and dressmakers. This industry was fueled by cotton imports from the American South, which allowed cheap and easy manufacturing of fabrics for clothing use. The industrialization of America soon followed, and the US emerged with new technologies, cheap materials, and a stronger than ever garment industry. The industry was fast growing in the early 1900s, but it wasn't until World War II that a standard was established for clothing production. This allowed clothing to be produced in mass quantities rather than in smaller workshops and in-store settings. The styles became more functional, and seasonal buying allowed for a fast turnover of merchandise. This created a shift towards mass retailing and a rise in department stores. Retailers began outsourcing cheap labor and production to developing countries. This led to a market for low-price clothing. For example, Walmart opened in 1962, and brands such as Gap became popularized. During the 1980s, economic globalization and liberalization of trade agreements boosted the ability for retailers to outsource production, thus making prices even cheaper. The younger generations fully supported the fast, cheap way to remain trendy and fill their closet. This leads us to our modern day of fast fashion, where the average consumer goes for a trendy yet affordable look. Zara, Shein, Forever 21, H&M, these are just a few of the many global retail giants that rule over a fast fashion industry today. These brands are recognized and loved for their rapid product turnover paired with cheap prices. Zara is capable of designing, producing, and distributing new pieces in just 2 weeks, and Forever 21 is not far behind at 6 weeks. These top brands now operate off of about 52 micro-seasons a year, producing a new collection every week. The customer is never left with outdated stock, and our culture today evolves around this endless cycle of clothing. It leaves us always searching for the next best thing, and fast-paced trends create an out with the old, in with the new mentality in our engagement with fashion.
The rising popularity of the fast fashion industry creates a throwaway culture that has us quickly retiring clothing items and constantly buying new things. Companies feel pressure to keep up with our fast-paced trends and are always producing new items at the lowest possible cost, almost ensuring that environmental corners are going to be cut. The fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries worldwide due to resource-intensive supply chains that create extensive waste and polluted ecosystems. While there are many issues with this industry, we are going to focus on the materials used and the ramifications of their use. Many synthetic fibers such as polyester and nylon are used in these types of clothing due to their low cost of production. While the process of making materials like polyester may be cheap, the production process involves the use of fossil fuels and creates a large amount of carbon emissions. In fact, the fashion industry accounts for 8% of global carbon emissions. The next issue would be that these chemicals and plastics break down into the water supply and the earth once they are discarded, which we have mentioned that a large amount of these clothes become discarded fairly quickly. The life of these clothes is not meant to be long, as they want you to stop wearing them and continuously buy new things. In 2017, 16 million tons of clothes were thrown out in the United States alone. The majority of these clothes are currently sitting in landfills, where the toxic chemicals in them are being released into the air and into the ground. Lastly, it is important to mention that even organic materials such as cotton require large amounts of water and pesticides to be farmed. The fashion industry as a whole produces 20% of the world's wastewater. However, if the environment is not of your utmost concern, then maybe the impacts this industry has on workers and even us as consumers will spark your interest. Production costs are also kept low by severely underpaying workers that produce these clothes. On top of being paid extremely low wages, the conditions in which they work are unacceptable. They work long hours without breaks in extremely loud and dirty buildings. The workers are further put in danger by working with toxic chemicals used in the dyes and fiber treatments, such as benzothiazole, which has been linked to cancers and respiratory illnesses and is found in our clothing. This is a great example of how these clothes also affect the buyer. We are putting these clothes with harmful substances onto our bodies where they can be absorbed by our skin. The conditions that workers are put through are highlighted in the riveting documentary The True Cost, which is definitely worth a watch. There are few positives associated with the fast fashion industry unless you benefit from a retail giant harming the environment, their workers, and us as consumers. As consumers, we hold power over these companies and influence change by shifting our shopping habits towards more sustainable solutions. It is important to support sustainable fashion brands, or brands who make a conscious effort to produce items in a socially and ecologically responsible way. Declining support for fast fashion brands could also force them to make a change. The ultimate goal is to turn the fashion industry into a more circular economy. Here to tell us more about what they're doing to combat the impacts of fast fashion are two Wake students, Elise Harris and Maddie Mayer, who are involved in organizations dedicated to this cause.
My name is Maddie May. Where's That From is the company that I co-own and co-operate, and we provide sustainably made and curated clothing and accessories. The thing is, consumers shouldn't necessarily shop at my business because the whole thing is to reduce your consumption, but consumers should shop at our business if you are looking to fill something that you know there's a piece in your wardrobe that maybe you don't have yet, then you can look for that specific piece. But if you want a sustainably made product, we have it for you.
My name is Elise Harris. The goals of Wayward Fashion are to educate students at Wake Forest the importance of sustainable fashion and get more people just in general at Wake Forest and beyond to shop sustainably and from independent artists. My advice that I would give to people that are looking to shop more sustainably is definitely take it little by little. It is a little overwhelming at first, believe me, I understand, but once you get into the groove of shopping sustainably and just going to different resources, it becomes a lot easier and you start picking like little things that are great additions to your closet and will stick with you for a very long time. So some places that I shop sustainably locally in Winston-Salem are the University Goodwill is a great example. Design Archives downtown is really cool. They have like lots of different like little shops that have like different interests. So like there's one that's like really quirky, like a shop that's really quirky, and then one that's more like mainstream, like fashion.
We challenge you to pledge to do one or more of the following. Set a certain amount of time between buying new clothes to limit consumption. Donate one bag of clothes to a thrift store, such as Goodwill. Shop from a thrift store instead of an online store. Research your favorite fashion brands and investigate the production process and transparency. We would like to clarify that this presentation is not condemning those who shop at these companies. We would just like to emphasize that it is easy to be sustainable and encourage making wiser choices when shopping for the sake of our planet and workers.